everyone, welcome to the Coding Channel. Today is the 14th episode of our Java tutorial series for beginners. And in this episode, we are going to talk about how to use do-while loops in Java. This and more when we come back. In this episode, we will talk about the variant of the while loop, which is the do while. Now, this loop will execute the code block once before checking if the condition is true. Then it will repeat the loop as long as the condition is true. Okay, now let's take a look at this example. I have here the syntax, the initialization, and then this time around, we will use the do keyword, and then we have a curly brace here to start, to mean the start and the end, and then at the end of the right curly brace, that's the only time you put the while condition there. We have the while keyword and then the condition and then the semicolon. Okay, unlike in while loop, okay, if you put a semicolon at the end of the while condition, that is a logic error. Okay, but in here, that is required. Okay, now one advantage of do while is actually before you test, okay, there is a you are sure that the code has been executed at least once, okay, prior to the condition. Okay, so if you are planning to create a program, something like this, so the do while is more appropriate in solving that kind of problem. Okay, and also we have the increment inside of the do while. Okay, now same with the while. With a do while, we can also have the counter-controlled repetition. When I say counter-controlled, it's a no number of repetition. And then also, we can have the Sentinel-Controlled Repetition or unknown number of repetition. So let me discuss with you first the version of do while using the counter-controlled repetition, wherein we know the number of repetition. Okay, so for instance, let's try to have a very simple program, okay, just for you to learn the syntax of do while. Okay, so for example, we have for example, the largest number of 10 numbers input. So let's try to use a do while for that. Okay, so since we will be using a loop, so the variables here are somehow lesser compared to if you don't have any repetition structure there. Okay, so let's try. What are the variables needed? Okay, of course we will be needing an integer variable number for the user input, and then aside from that, we will be using the largest for example, a variable to store the largest value so far. And then if you want to display all the user input, so the only way that you can do is to declare a string variable, for example, output, and then we will have a string concatenation later. Okay, so now since we will be using the output, okay, the output variable to display all the inputs of the user, so better that we put an initial value here at the MC string. The same thing with the largest. Okay, so for example, the smallest value that the user is allowed to enter is greater than 0. Okay, so let's try. So these are now the variables. So what's next? Of course, an input statement. Okay, so let's try to have an input statement here. Number is equal to what? We'll be using integer that parseInt. Okay, that's automatic. It's because we will be needing JOptionPane, and we all know that inside of the text box of JOptionPane, if we're going to use that, or every time we use that, we need to convert from string to integer. Okay, so that's why that's the always the syntax. Okay, let me just put this in the second line. So enter, for example, a number Okay, and then string concatenation. Okay, number what? It depends. Number, for example, if I'm going to use counter variable in our while. Okay, so again, don't forget to import the JOptionPane under javax.swing package. Okay, now, since we are going to ask the user several times, so it's very evident that we will put this input statement inside of our do while. Okay, so these are the codes that needs to be repeated. So that's why that one should be inside of the do while. Okay, again, based from this syntax, we will have first the initialization. So for example, we have a counter variable. So let's initialize that to 1. That's our initialization. And then using a do. Okay, so we need to have that one and the right brace here, and then the do while, and then the condition, and then the semicolon after. Okay, so what's the condition? So for example, while counter is less than or equal to what? To 10. Okay, so this is an example again of a counter controlled repetition, because we know that we will be asking the user to enter 10 numbers. Okay, so that is a fixed number of repetition. That's why it's counter controlled repetition. So we have an initialization. So this is the possible statement, the input statement inside of our do while. And then what else? We will be we will test now if that number is greater than the largest so far, which is by default is 0. So if it is true, what are we going to do? So we will assign the number to largest by having largest is equal to number assignment statement. Okay, and don't forget, what else? Aside from that, we will store also all the user input. So we will have output is equal to output plus. So this is the shortcut of doing that. Plus what? Plus the number, the user input, and then if you want to have a space there, and then semicolon. Okay. And then aside from that, we will be needing before we test. So counter plus plus or plus plus counter. Okay, so we need to have an increment there. So we have the initialization. So this one is the statement, and then this one is the increment, and then we have the condition here. Okay, that's a simple syntax of a do while. Okay, and then of course the output statement. So if we have an output statement, we will put that outside of the do while, since we will display that only once. Okay, for example, we will have a system that print ln here, or print only. Okay, let's try to use that one. And then for example, for numbers, so what are the input that's inside of the output string variable? So we will use that one. And then what else? Okay, we will be for example, there's a backslash in here for a new line. So for example, the largest is what? Okay, the largest is, where did we store the largest? Inside of the largest variable, then semicolon. Okay, so that's it. Okay, so let's try now to run. Okay, so enter number 1. Okay, 5. We have 87, 98 for example, 90, 56, 43, 23, 77, and then 66, and then for example 93. Okay, so for numbers 5, 87, 98, 90, 56, 43, 23, 77, 66, 93, the largest is 98. Okay, so we're done with the example of do while, the counter controlled repetition. Okay, so I've told you a while ago that using a do while, same with a while, there is also another way of using do while, which is the what? You can also use this for a Sentinel-Controlled Repetition, meaning the unknown number of a repetition. Okay, so let's try. Let's try to convert this one. Okay, so meaning it's not always 10. So it depends on the user how many times he or she wants to enter a number. Okay, but we will need to uh, put here a sentinel value. Okay, so for example, so we will now delete the counter here. We will not use the counter anymore since we don't know how many times. Okay, but instead we will prompt the user. We will let the user know that once they enter -1, so that's the time that this program will exit. Okay, so this time the condition depends on the user input. Okay, so we will not need this initialization. I just have to delete it. And then also with the counter plus plus, so the input statements here will be the increment. Okay, because this is the only statement here that would change the value of number. So instead of counter here, we will change this to number, and then instead of less than or equal to 10, so we will now change that to not equal. So while the number is not equal to the sentinel value, which is -1, for example. Okay, the sentinel value depends on you. Okay, it's not always -1. Okay, so don't be confused with that. Okay, so we now have the do while. We have an input statement over here. Okay, so let's try to just make it a okay. So that's it. Let's try this time around with Sentinel controlled unknown number of repetition. Okay, let me try to run. Okay, so enter number. For example, we have 23, 32, 12, 34, 54, 45, 67, 87, 98, 90, 88, 99, 77, 66. I don't know how many already. Okay, and then for example, -1. Okay, once you press the enter key, okay, there you go. That's the end of our program. And take note, the largest here is 99. And we are correct. Okay, so that's it. That's the version of a do while having a sentinel value. Okay, that's why we call it a sentinel controlled repetition or unknown number of repetition. Okay, so before we end, let's try to have a little bit of challenge. Okay, so why not your professor um, wants you to modify this program, and then for instance, aside from the largest, okay, let's try to get also the second largest, the third, the fourth, the fifth. Okay, so meaning the top 5, and then we don't care for the rest, only the top 5. Okay, if the user have entered 20 numbers or 100 numbers, for example, okay, we only need the top 5, so we need to keep the top 5. So what are we going to do with that modification? Of course, we're not talking only of largest, so we will add another variables here. So for example, we have the second largest is equal to 0 here. And also we have the third largest. Third largest. And then we initialize also to 0. What else? Oh, we'll have a fourth largest. Okay. Fourth largest is equal to 0. And the last one, the fifth largest is equal to 0. Okay, that's it. So let's try enter a number, and then okay, now let's try to modify the if statement. So this time around, before we assign the new value to largest, we need to be extra careful. Okay, why? Because there is a possibility that the previous value of largest is the that would be the value of our second largest. Okay, so before we assign the value, the new user input, okay, to largest, so we will assign first the previous value of largest to the second largest. Okay, so the second largest now, the value is the previous value of largest. Okay, and then that's the only time we assign that value to the new value to largest. But what about the third, the fourth, and then the fifth largest? Okay, so we need also to put it here. Okay, so there's also a changes because the previous value of largest, we will now assign that to the third largest, and the third to fourth, and then the fourth to fifth. And then the previous value of fifth, we don't care anymore. Okay, so fifth largest, so is equal to the fourth largest. Okay, so that's how we do it. And then what else? So the fourth largest, the new value of fourth largest is the previous value of the third largest. Okay, that's how we do it. And then the new value of a third largest is the previous value of the second largest. Okay, there you go. And then the second largest, and then the number. What about if the number, if the user input is not greater than largest, but it's greater than the second largest? That's the time that we will be using the else if here. Okay, and then else if we just have to put it here, number is a greater than the second largest. So far, what are we going to do? Okay, so we will just have to copy this one. So same thing. Okay, we assign the fourth to fifth, the third to fourth, the second to third, and then the second largest now, the value is not the largest but the number, the new value, the new user input. Okay, and then another, what if the number is not greater than the second largest, but if it's greater than the what? It's greater than the third largest. So we'll have third largest here, and then we will just have to copy this one, just put it here. Okay, so there you go. We have fourth, and then the third largest instead of second largest, we will now assign the new value to the third largest. What about if that number is greater than the fourth largest? The fourth largest. Okay, if it's greater than the fourth largest, what are we going to do? We will just have to assign this one instead of third largest there. We put the number. That's it. And what else? The last one. What if number is not greater than the first, the second, the third, and then the fourth, but greater than the fifth number so far? Okay, so what are we going to do? So we will assign, okay, so for example, the fifth largest here, we will just replace this with number. Okay, that's it. And then in our output statement, aside from output, for example, aside from largest, so we will just have to copy this one and add more for the second largest. Okay, second largest, and then this one, second largest, last. Okay, just string concatenation, and then for another line, this one is for the third, for the fourth, for the fifth. Okay, you just have to change a little bit here, third largest, and then this one is for the third largest, this one is for the fourth, and for the fifth. Sorry, for the fifth largest. If it's the last one, no need to add a plus sign there. Okay, and then third, we have fourth, then we have fifth largest here. Okay, there we go. Let's try. Are we done? Okay, review. That's it. Let's try. Okay, run. Enter a number. We have 12, 23, 34, 56, 78, 90, 99, 88, 77, 55, 66, 44, 33, 22, 11, what else? 100. Okay, and then negative 1. Okay, there you go. So these are the numbers that we have entered from 12 to 23, 90, 99, 88 up to 100, and then negative 1 to exit. We have now the largest, the second largest 99, okay, and then 90, followed by 88, and then we have 78. There you go. That's it. That's how we solve the problem. It's like having the top 5 there. Okay, so this one is a flexible now because the number of input depends on the user. So that's the advantage of using a Sentinel-Controlled Repetition. Okay, so if you encounter with the same thing, just like what I did here, so this one could really help you. So these are the source code for this episode. And that's all for today. And if you like this video, please give us a thumbs up and consider subscribing. And as always, show your love through comments and favorites. God bless and thank you for watching.